Hey, this is Connor with CongruentX, and today we're going to be diving into the world of reporting and visuals with Power BI. Thanks for watching the Intro to Power Apps series so far. Today we're going to be talking about connecting to data sources, Power Query, adding visualizations, themes, and the Power BI service. Let's dive right in. As a point of reference, we're going to be using Dataverse as our database. We're going to be using some sample data that comes with the database, and I just wanted to show you that from the Dataverse perspective. First thing you're going to need to do is download Power BI Desktop. So this is the tool we need to use to build our data sets and build reports and visuals using those data sets. So let's talk about the overall layout of Power BI Desktop first. So on this left pane, you'll see three different sections. You'll see our report section, you'll see our table section, and our relationship model. On the top, you'll see a traditional kind of ribbon setup. There's a bunch of different tools that we'll go throughout this video. On the right-hand side of our screen, we have three different important areas. We have our filters, we have our visualizations, and we have essentially what's our data. Once we connect our data source, we're going to see a list of tables and fields here on the right. From the Home tab, we can add a data source. There's a couple of different ways to do this. I find the quickest way is to select this Dataverse button. So it's asking for two different things here. It's asking for my environment domain, and it's asking for the connectivity mode. So one of the ways you can get your environment domain is if I go back to Dataverse. For me, this is always the easiest way to do it. If I open a model app in that environment, I just grab this URL just after the .com and just after the HTTPS. Go ahead and paste that in there. And then there's two connectivity modes. There's import and direct query. Import means the Power BI service is actually going to incrementally refresh and store your data on the Power BI service so you can access it more quickly. Direct query is a little more complicated. My understanding is instead of storing the data on Power BI service, it actually gets called every time a user opens the report. So you get quicker updates, but there are some limitations with operations you can do using direct query. So for now, we're just going to use import. We're gonna hit OK. And for you, it might ask you to sign into your organization, and just go ahead and do that. And you should see the menu here. On the left-hand side here, we're gonna see a list of all of our tables in our database. All we need to do is select each table we wanna bring into this report. You'll see it gives me a little preview of data in that table. So let's grab the account and the contact tables. And you have two options at this point. You can either press load or transform data. Load is gonna bring the raw response from the database into Power Query. What we wanna do is we want to optimize and kind of filter that response so that our report is responsive and fast. So we're gonna hit transform data instead. What that's gonna do is open up a window called Power Query. Power Query is essentially just a interface for you to edit the call to your data sources. Now, what I would recommend is for you to always start by choosing the columns you need in your report. There's a couple different ways to do this. We're gonna just do this using the UI. If we select choose columns, it's gonna give us a list of all the columns, and we're gonna select the ones that we want. Let's say we want the account ID. We're definitely gonna want the name of the account. Let's grab the revenue, the number of employees. Let's grab the SIC code, and let's grab the first address fields. Let's grab the city. Now that we have our columns selected, let's press OK. And you'll see it adds a step here on the right. This top bar here is the actual code that's performing this operation. Let's do a similar thing for contacts. And since we're gonna be creating a relationship between accounts and contacts, we're gonna need to grab the account ID field at the contact level. Now you can see we have a much more manageable call from Dataverse. So from there, you just click close and apply. Okay, now that we're connected to our data, let's add some visuals. So in this fields pane, you'll see I have my two tables, account and contact. And if I drop those down, I can see all of my fields. Now there's two different ways you can add visuals in Power BI. You can actually click and drag fields onto the report canvas, and it'll make some sort of guess on the visualization you want to see, or you can click on a specific visualization and add fields to it. So let's grab the city and drag it onto our report pane. You can see Power BI grabbed a map visual. You'll see if I click and drag industry name code, it'll grab a table to show me all the different options for industry name code. So let's say we want to show accounts by industry. There's two ways we can do this. Let's grab a pie chart by just clicking this icon. Let's resize it. And there's two things we can do from here. We can either click the field and drag it onto the report itself, and Power BI will guess where you want it to go, or you can specifically drag a field to these different sections for the visualization. So you'll see we have the legend, the details, and the values for this specific pie chart. So in our case, we're going to drag the industry code into the legend, and now we need something to count, right? So I always like to use the account ID because they're unique. So we'll drag the account ID into the values section. So you can see we have a pretty even distribution of industries within the system. As another example, let's use a bar chart. Let's say we want to show revenue by account. So let's drag the revenue into the value section, and let's drag the name into the axis section. Now you'll notice this doesn't look right. So what's happening in the value section is counting the number of revenues for this specific axis, which in our case, we want to sum that. We don't want to count, we want to sum. So now you'll see this looks a bit more correct. Another cool thing is you can actually switch visuals without changing anything. So when I'm selected on this bar chart, I can actually click the pie chart, and Power BI will do its best to translate your fields into this new visual. So I've added back our pie chart, and I wanted to show you something here. Power BI reports are dynamic, meaning that when I select an element of a visual, it'll actually filter the entire page or the entire report, depending on how I have it set up. So let's say if I wanted to see this data only in the context of companies that are in the transportation industry, if I select on transportation, you'll see the entire report filters. If I click again, it goes back. And just about every visual in Power BI supports this. So if I click on a specific account, you can see it's highlighting the industry it's in. Let's add a visual using our contacts. Let's just add a table, and we're gonna select all the fields we want in this table. So we're gonna select our full name, and maybe our job title. So as I mentioned before, our entire report is dynamic. It's gonna show me the contacts who are related to the AdventureWorks account. Now let's take a look at our relationship model here. You can see that Power BI has automatically created this relationship between accounts and contacts. If we double click on this relationship or select manage relationships, we can get a little bit more details on this. We can see we have a many-to-one relationship between contacts and account using the account ID field. Power BI automatically detected this relationship, but you can add these on your own if you want to. All you do is select manage relationships and select new. You select each table, and then you tell the system which fields are creating the relationship. You then select the cardinality, so whether it's many to one, one to many, or many to many, and then you press OK. So I'm not gonna get super deep into filtering or slicers in this video, but I will show you how to add measures and columns using DAX. DAX is kind of similar to what we did in Power Query, except it's in a different UI. So there's two ways to do this. You can either select the modeling tab and click new measure or new column, or you can right click in our fields area under the table and select new measure or new column. Let's use our full name example again, but with DAX. So we're gonna right click, select new column. In this first section, this is the column name. So let's call it full name version 2. So in our case, we're gonna start typing first, and you'll see contact first name comes up. Double click that. Again, ampersand is the concatenate operator. Let's create a space, add another ampersand, and we'll start typing last name and click the check mark. If we go to our data tab, we can see full name v2 has been created, and it is correctly concatenating the first name and the last name. Now let's create a measure. So a measure is going to be one specific value based on things in your report. So if we right click and press new measure, and there's a couple different ways to do this, and I'm going to do it the hard way just to show you a couple more functions. So first, to find the average, let's sum all of the revenue. So there's a sum function, and we just provide it with the column. We're going to type revenue, and we're going to divide that by the total number of accounts. So there's a count rows function. Double click that, it'll auto populate. And let's select our account table. Now, if we press the check mark, it'll create that measure. Let me grab a card visual, and we'll drag that average revenue over, and we'll see we get 45K. So there's a lot more we could go over, but I'm gonna try to keep this simple, and I'll leave you with one last thing regarding creating reports. We can actually easily change the look and feel of our reports using themes. If we select the view in ribbon, we can see there's a themes section. We can drop this down. So we select a couple different variations, you can see our report totally changes. Our data stays the same, but the look and feel changes. There's actually a market of existing themes that you can download. There's a link here called Theme Gallery. You can also manually change the theme by selecting a visual and going in the formatting section of that visual. You'll see for each visual we have different options, and you can get really crazy with the customization here. So the last piece we'll talk about here is the Power BI service. So right now our report is only living on our desktop. Other users cannot see it online. To publish this report, we go to File and Publish. From there we just select which workspace we want this report to get added to. Now let's talk about workspaces. What is a workspace? So there are public workspaces and there are personal workspaces. Every user has a personal workspace. If I publish that report to my personal workspace, only I can see it. In order for other users to see your reports, you have to use a public workspace. That does come along with some additional licensing, which I'm not going to cover today. Let's talk about some of the elements and kind of organization of a workspace. There are three main elements to every workspace. There are reports, dashboards, and data sets. So when we were in Power Query, narrowing down our columns and adding columns, we were actually creating a data set, and that data set gets published to the Power BI service. And other users can actually use your data set instead of recreating it from scratch every time. So let's think about some of these other components in kind of a tree view. At the highest level, we have our workspace. Below that, we have dashboards and reports. So you can share both a report and a dashboard to different users. So what's the difference between a dashboard and a report? A dashboard can contain elements from multiple reports. So that could be the entire report itself, or it could be specific tiles or visuals from that report. So if we go back to our example here, this bar graph would be considered a tile in a report, and I can add just this bar graph to a dashboard. So there's kind of two parallel paths you can take. You have a dashboard and a report, and underneath those you have different elements. With a report, you have pages and visuals. A single report can have multiple pages. To use our example, we just have one page, but in the bottom left, I can actually add another page. And obviously this page contains multiple visuals. So within dashboards, we have reports and tiles. So I can pin an entire report to a dashboard, or I can pin one specific tile to a dashboard. This kind of democratizes the creation and sharing of reports in your system. So again, there is a lot more to Power BI than we covered here today. This is just a basic overview. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out to us at CongruentX.com. Like and subscribe if you thought this video was helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.